Okay, now I want to introduce you to the Maya interface. When you first launch Maya, you'll be greeted by this interface, and I know it can get a little bit confusing at first, but we're going to break it down here. So the first thing we have is the main menu bar, which is dynamic, by the way. It changes because the Maya has what we call menu sets, and those menu sets change what is on the menu bar. Although there are some menus right here that are constant, but some other changes with menu sets. So right here we have the drop down for our Maya menu sets. We have the modeling, the rigging, animation, FX, and rendering. Then we have a customize in case you want to create another menu set. Okay, so under the modeling menu sets, we have some menus that have to do with modeling. Now the only constant ones are anything from file to Windows, then from the cache and all in help. So if I change the menu set right now to rigging, you will notice it changes as well. Skeleton, skin, form, controlling, things that have to do with rigging. Then if I change it to animation, it changes again. So Maya has different menus grouped into menu sets, so we can have a specific menu for a specific function. We have a lot of menus. We can put all the menus at once online. So, and our menu sets use the function keys. So since we have modeling, rigging, animation, FX, rendering, we use the function keys starting from F2. So F2, F3, F4, F5, and F6 will give you the individual menu sets. In these menus, we have almost all the tools that we'll be using throughout our Maya manipulation. Then right here we have some other menus, like we have what to use to open up a scene, save a scene, the undo and redo button. Then we have this kind of lines here. When you see an arrow, it means an angle. It means there's something hidden inside of it. When you see it like this, that means it's been opened up. So it being this way means there's something hidden. So all I do is click on it, and it reveals what is hidden. So this has some selection that has to do with animation, polygons, nerves, and stuff like that. Okay, so I can collapse this. Then we have things that have to do with selection of our objects, either by hierarchy, by the object, or by the components of the object. So, and these are selection masks. So it might be hidden in your own version of Maya when you install it newly, but it's there. So these are selection marks that help us select options. So we'll get into that later, much later. Then we have the snapping tools: snap to grid, snap to curve, snap to points, and we have different snapping tools here. We'll be using them as we move along the way. Then we have the menu here that's hidden, that makes us show our inputs and outputs. And also we have history turned on, and history enables us whenever we create our objects and whatever we do on the objects, Maya records the history of that. So it's always advisable to leave it on, because if you turn it off and you make changes to your object, you may not be able to access those changes anymore. Then we have menus that have to do with our renderings. So these are our rendering previews and IPR render and render settings. So we'll get into that deeper in the rendering section of this course. Then we have transformation values here, and then you want to sign into Autodesk. Then right here we have our workspaces. This is the Maya Classic workspace. We could come in here and change our workspace to modeling standard or sculpts, UV editing. So for every workspace there is a new menu. So if I, for instance, change to the animation workspace, you would see my interface has changed to everything that has to do with animation and timelines and graphs. So when I want to work on animation specifically, I will be in this menu, in this workspace. Then you want to go into sculpting. You have the sculpting workspace. So I typically just use them on Maya Classic. Then anything I want to do, I just go back and forth. Okay, so right here we have some other drop menus that controls the side panel here. So this side panel menus, the first one is the modeling toolkit. So toggling on will show you the modeling toolkit, and this is a summarized version of our modeling tools that we have up here. Then this one will show us the quick rig toolkit. So, and this is for when we are dealing with human IK and want to create scale rig for a character. This one is the attribute editor, so it's one of the places we'll spend most of our time in. Then this is the tool settings. So anytime we select a tool, we can come in here and make some settings. Right now no tool is selected, but if I make a selection on the tool here, you can now see settings that have to do with that tool. Okay, then we have the channel box and layer editor. So there's a channel box, is a layer editor. So anytime we create an object, the information about that object will come up here. So if I come up to this point here where we have this, guys, these are the shelves. So let's just explain in the channel box. If I click on any object here, you now see the channel box is loaded with the information about that object, from the translation to the rotate and scale and visibility and other tools about the creation of that object. Okay, then now right here we have our time slider and our range slider. This is for animation. It shows our time slider. Then this is the range slider that shows us or controls what is visible in the time slider. Right now the range slider is showing from 1 to 120, and that's how long of our time we can see. Then right here we have some boxes here. So the first and the last show us the complete extent of our time slider, even though we can't see all, but we know it's from 1 to 200. Then in this, the second ones show us what our time slider is presently showing. So if I shift my time slider, you see those ones change. So right now my time slider is showing 33 to 152, which we have here, and we can see that here. If I want to show more of my time slider, I will change the range slider by clicking on that box, and you see the time slider reduces or increases accordingly. So just leave it back at 120. Just come here and 120. Okay, then here we have our VCR play buttons. This one moves the moves our indicator from to the beginning of the time slider or to the end of the time slider. So this is playback range. Then we have the stepping back of one frame or stepping forward one frame. That's if you want to move frame by frame. And this is from setting to keys, stepping back or forward into a specific key. We'll get into this when we're doing animation, and this is to play backward and forward. Okay, then right here we have things that have to do with our time slider. Bookmarks is new in Maya 2020. You might not see it in your 2016 version or anything later. So then we have the thing that has to do with the frame rates. Right now this software is set to 24 frames per second. You can come in here and change your frame rate to anything you want. Okay, then these are other animation settings. These are settings that makes you create a loop when you're playing back your animation, and this has to do with your cache playback. This is the audio, and it's new in Maya 2020 as well. Then this one records your keyframes. Well, when you set a keyframe and you start making movements as you progress. Clicking on this button will record all those movements. Then this one sets your animation with good preferences. Then right here we have our command line, where you see all the scripts that have to do with the modeling. It by default uses MEL, Meyer language. So if I create, let's say I delete this and I create a new sphere, now you would see the script that talks about the creation of the sphere and how the sphere is created. So if I copy down the script, Control C, and maybe I just delete this guy. So if I want to create a sphere now, I can as well click here in my Meyer and execution language and Control V there, and I'll paste. Once I hit enter, this sphere will be created. Okay, so this will display the command of the script. This will make you type in your own commands. Then here we have the helpline. The helpline displays short help menus for anything you want. So any object you hover over, you'd see information about it right here in the helpline. So anything you click on, you'll see it on the helpline. Okay, then right here on the left we have our toolbox. Our toolbox has everything that has to do with the tools we're going to be using to manipulate our objects. Also, we have tools that help us navigate through our viewports. Then we have the outliner menu here. So this is our viewports. This center window here, it shows all the things that we bring into our scene. Our viewport enables us to see what's in our scene. Now we have 4 of that, so I'll be dealing with viewports in a later video, but these are where we'll be seeing our viewports. Okay, and right up here we have the viewport menus, so and other menus that have to do with the way our object is seen or viewed in our viewports. So then, like I said, this is called the shelf, and the shelf is broken down into mini tabs, and every tab has its own tools. So this is the curves and surfaces. In using previous versions of Maya, surfaces is a shelf on its own and curves is something different. Okay, so but these are the curves and these are surfaces. Then we have the poly modeling for polygon tools. Then we have the sculpting, we have rigging, animation, so different shelves that are available here. And these are the tools that can make us display shelf. Like you click on this the arrow here, it makes you jump to a particular shelf. So if you don't want to select the shelf from here, you can just say, okay, let's go into the Bifrost menu, and it opens up that shelf, or you can come back to the poly menu and shows you the shelf. Then here we have the shelf tabs. We have the shelf editor. So if you don't want to see your shelf, you could hide your shelf tabs and you don't see the tabs around. So, but obviously I want to see my shelf tabs. Okay, but it just reduces or gives you a little bit more space, not really much though. Then we have the shelf editor. If you want to edit any shelf, then you can navigate shelves also from your previous. That's one step at a time. You can create your own shelf. You can create your own shelf or delete a specific shelf. You can load a shelf from maybe a shelf you've saved up from a previous system, and you could copy that shelf information and come and put it into another system. So there's, if you click on the shelf editor, for instance, you would see this little menu here. So on the left we have all the shelves. Then here on the right we have the shelf contents of what the shelf has. So and all this information based on the specified content I selected. So the icon preview and stuff. So you want to change the preview or the image of the icon of any of the tools, you could come in here and locate one on your system. and on that way. Now, the if you have a shelf and there is something that you don't see in your shelf, like if you look at my shelf now, you definitely wouldn't have it arranged this way. First of all, you wouldn't see this tool here, and this tool will probably be somewhere at the back here. So, and that's because I added it into my shelf. So how do we add tools to our shelf? So let's take, for instance, let me delete this particular tool. So I right click on it and delete it, so it's no longer on my shelf. So I want to bring that tool back, and that was a CV curve tool. I'll get into curves in another video. I come to my create menu and I look for the curve tools, and that's the curve there, CV curve. Okay, so if I want to add it to my shelf, all I do is Control Shift and I click on it and it's added to my shelf. Okay, so how do I now bring it over to the side, because it's on the wrong side? These are the surfaces, these are the curves, so I want it to come to be first out of all these free curves. So how I do that is under the shelf editor. So I now have my curve settings and I scroll down and there it is down at the bottom. So all I do is lift it up, okay, in the shelf. So I raise it and you can see it's moving already. So I just do that and move it to where I want it to be, right there. Okay, you can also add new tools into your shelf from here if you don't want to use, or probably you forget about the Control and Shift. So you could also open your shelf editor and click add from here, so it's still going to give you the same results. All right, so that's it basically about the interface. So, and these are UI elements, user interface elements. There are times you want to create some space on your system and you don't want to see all these tools. So under your Windows tab here, we have what we call UI elements. Then you could see the things you want to hide. Like take for instance, you want to hide your time slider, you can just come here and click on it and the time slider is hidden. So, but if you want to bring it back, it's the same thing. You just come and check it back on and it's back on. Then you can customize your menu. It doesn't really matter what you see. You may not have what I have on my scene, but that's okay. Each of these menu windows, or each of these interface windows are, and you can then customize your windows, all the little windows here in your interface, and it doesn't really matter what you see, because you might not have what I have on my screen and you want to have what you have on my screen, or you want to create a customized window of your interface. So like for instance, you could decide you don't want your shelf to be here, you want it beside your viewports. So where we have these double lines here on all windows enables you to detach that window and place it somewhere else. So if I want to remove my shelf from here for some reason, I don't know why, I will click on this double bar and bring it out and see I've undocked my shelf. Okay, so if I want to place it anywhere else, maybe like I said, beside this place, all I do is bring it in there, and once it comes in here to this point, you see some blue lines showing where I can dump the shell on. So if I see like this blue line, I dump my shelf there, my shelf now appears on the side of the window. So for some reason you might want to put your shelves here. I don't know, it's up to you, but I don't like my shelf being here, but it's not a bad thing. It creates more vertical space on my viewports. And let me just reset back and take it back to where I like it. And so just come here and select this and put it right here. If you put it right here, it's not going to fill up the whole space, it's going to fill up the space above the viewport. So I want it to be here where the blue line goes across the my screen there, and that's where I want my shelf to be. Okay, and if for any reason you change something on your interface and you don't really remember what you did, you could always come into your workspaces, and whatever workspace you are on, you can reset the current workspace. But if you make the changes and you like the changes, you can save the current workspace as a new workspace. You can give it the name that you want. But like I always advise my students, Maya has a whole lot of tools, a whole lot of workspaces. I don't think creating a new one will be a wise choice to make complex software even more complex. So we just leave it the way it is, and we swap their workspaces based on what we want to do. All right, so that's it about the interface. So I'll be going over some other tools in successive videos.